Heather from Be Earthy. Let's do a hive check. And let's talk about how this year went. We picked up our nuke on May 14th around 9 a.m. And I had the bees installed by 10. And I sat there watching them. They were flying around doing their first flight. And there were a lot of them. I put 5 full frames with brood and honey and the queen in the hive, and then added 5 empty frames. On the 21st, I sat and watched the bees, and I noticed that in the mornings they were slow to wake up. By noon, they were all buzzing around. And they all seemed to go to bed around 4 or 5-ish. That's when they calmed down. On the 24th of May, I did a hive inspection. I didn't see any new building on any of the empty frames. I did see the honey storage, new brood, and I found the queen. They were being very friendly, and I added a feeder. In June, it started to feel more like summer, and the bees were more active. I kept feeding them, but there was nothing new on the empty frames. This is when I noticed bee poop. Bee poop everywhere. Nobody ever talks about bee poop, but there's bee poop. By the middle of June, I was still feeding them, but I still didn't see any new progress on the empty frames. June 18th, on Father's Day, I got my first sting. At this time, I did notice that they were working on one of the empty frames. I stopped feeding them at this point. July started off really good with lots of production. Most of my frames are full. I saw drone cells. There were no queen cells, and the queen looked like she was doing really good. They did a lot of new building, and I found it super interesting how they just glue everything together. In July, we went to Michigan. So before we went, I put the honey super on top. It was getting really crowded down at the bottom. I really didn't want them to swarm while we were out of town, so I thought by giving them the super, it would give them more space to spread out. As I was putting the super on, I was not wearing my gloves, and I got 3 stings on my hand. And my hands really did swell up quite a bit, and during our trip to Michigan, it was difficult. They were very sore. Once we got home from Michigan, I opened up the super and noticed there were lots and lots of bees up in there. They were filling all the cracks. I have a flow hive. So when I put the flow hive super on there, it was super interesting to watch them fill every little tiny crack in that box.
Empty.
July 26th,
empty.
I really noticed seeing a lot of drones. It was amazing. I'd never seen them before or noticed them before. They were so much bigger and so much louder, and they sound so much scarier. And everybody was like, what is that loud noise? And it was the drones. And I had to explain to them that they're not going to hurt you. They have no stinger. On the 27th, I got home from work and noticed that I didn't have so many bees. I looked inside the super and barely see any of them up there. So I opened the brood box, and after I took out a couple frames, I noticed I had a lot less bees than I had before. So I'm assuming that it swarmed. So I took the super off and I called Bill, and they're going to troubleshoot for me so that we can figure out if they actually swarmed or not. On the 30th of July, I did a hive inspection, and it looked like I had lots of activities. I saw lots of honey on the ends, brood and drone cells, larvae, and a bunch of queen cells all over. I spoke with an expert, and they suggested that I put a smaller brood box underneath the current brood box, and I cut out all the queen cells. In the beginning of August, I purchased that new brood box and put it underneath. They were very active. There was lots of eggs and brood, but I didn't see the queen. In the middle of August, I started seeing drones. Lots and lots and lots of drones. At this point, I was really worried and not sure if I should have that many drones. Towards the end of August, we were told that we were going to have a hurricane. So my husband took precautions and we strapped down the hive, even though we really didn't get any wind or rain. So the next day we took off the straps and I took out the bottom board. In a flow hive, they have this plastic board that they have that goes underneath the hive, which I find interesting because you can see all the little stuff getting dropped out, but I don't like how it collects the water and gets mold on it really fast. I sat watching all the drones going in and out, and then I noticed that the bees were kicking the drones out. Multiple bees, or worker bees, would attack one drone at a time, pulling them out of the hive. It was an amazing sight. Towards the end of August, we did a mite check, and I think that I had maybe 5 or 6 mites in that. So we picked up a mite treatment and installed that. I did not see the queen at this time, so we picked up a new queen on August 29th and put her in there. Killed off any new queens that I saw. On that same hive inspection, I smashed about 6 to 7 queen cups. The beginning of September, everything looked really good. The queen was still in the hive. There was lots of nectar and pollen, but I really didn't see larvae or capped honey. This was the first time I saw hive moths underneath in my bottom board. I would find them. So I became very diligent at looking under the hive for moths or larvae and smashing them.
There she is. Spot her?
My hive check on the 15th of September, I really didn't see any capped honey, larvae, or eggs. I did see capped brood, not a lot, and I couldn't find the queen, but I am still learning. On the hive check on the 24th of September, I found the queen, and there was lots of brood. But the larvae looked a little dry, so I decided to put some water on a little plate for them. And I had to smash 3 queen cells. There was some capped honey, about 3 frames full. At the beginning of October, I did a hive check and a mite check. I found 3 mites. I still have the treatment on there. I did notice on this day that there was lots of pollen and nectar, and the larvae looked really good. The next hive checked on October 8th. I found 4 full frames of honey, lots of pollen and nectar, capped honey and brood. I found the queen. There were no queen cells, and I added sugar water at this time and put in the entrance reducer, and I saw 1 hive moth larvae. On the 15th of October, I did my hive check, and everything looked really good. There was capped brood, capped honey, lots of nectar, lots of pollen. I didn't see the queen at this time, but I did see larvae. At the end of October, we did a hive check. It was really windy this day, but I still did it, and we didn't see any sign of the marked queen. I did see 3 queen cells that looked like they had hatched, so we might have had a swarm again. There was lots of honey and capped brood, about 4.5 frames full of bees, but it wasn't looking good for the queen with the dot. It'd been a couple weeks since I've opened the hive. It was the middle of November, and I opened it pretty late in the day. The bees were really calm, but I found no brood, no capped, no eggs, no larvae. It was as though about 60% of the frames were capped honey. No queen. I couldn't see the queen anywhere. The next day, I pulled all frames and found queen with some larvae. I killed that feral queen and moved the honey frames to the outside, empty frames to the middle. Made sure larvae was in the middle also. Then I added the new queen. At the end of November, I did another hive check, and since we moved the full frames to the outside, that's where the bees are. They're not hanging out in the middle, and it really seemed like there were two separate hives. The left side of the hive had the new queen and had lots of activity, where the right side of the hive had a whole bunch of queen cells, probably 13, 14 queen cells on 4 frames. It was really odd, and I got rid of all those queen cells and was hoping that they would become one. But for that day, that week, they did seem to be separate, 2 separate hives.
Get off of there.
I did a hive check on the 3rd of December. The queen was laying, and I didn't see any queen cells, and they seemed to be getting together because the queen is now on the right side. By the 10th, I didn't see any queen cells at all also, and everything looked like it was going pretty good. The hive check that I did in the middle of December showed me in detail that in my first frame, I have capped honey, and I saw nectar and pollen. In the second frame, one side was empty, and the other side had nectar, capped honey. The third frame had capped honey and nectar. The fourth frame, I found a queen cell. I did smash that queen cell. The 5th frame was empty. The 6th frame was empty. The 7th frame was empty, but on the opposite side, I seen new comb. Now this frame, I had put in some wax paper to see if that would help them to build on it, and it does seem as though they are building on the one side. The 8th frame has capped honey and nectar and pollen. The 9th frame has capped brood, capped honey, drones, cells, and I saw some larvae. So then the 10th frame, I found the queen, capped brood, capped honey, pollen, nectar. It looked really good. So all in all, for the first 6 months of my hive's life, I've gone through 2 queens. I've had to kill 2 feral queens. And I'm told the reason we kill these feral queens is because you want those calm genetics. And sometimes in my head, I think to myself, well, maybe we don't have so many bees in this world right now because we keep killing them off and not letting them swarm and reproduce. This is my end of the year update. Everybody have a great new year and be earthy.